Confidence is often mistaken for boldness, for that fearless energy that steps onto stages or takes big risks. But beneath every act of bravery lies something quieter, something far more powerful: respect. The way you see and treat yourself when no one else is watching is the bedrock upon which confidence is built. Without it, every brave act is a mask, every success a fragile performance waiting to crumble under the weight of self-doubt. Respect for yourself means acknowledging your inherent worth even before the results come. It's not about achievements, looks, or approval. It's about recognizing that you value simply because you exist. Because you are human, flawed, growing, and learning. This kind of respect is not loud. It doesn't need applause. It's a deep, steady belief that you are deserving of care, of patience, and of your own kindness. When you build confidence on bravery alone, it often depends on outcomes. You feel good only when you succeed, only when others notice. But when confidence is rooted in respect, failure doesn't destroy you, it refines you. You no longer need to win every battle to feel worthy. You start seeing mistakes not as proof of inadequacy, but as evidence of courage, of effort, of trying again when it would have been easier to quit. Respect transforms the way you speak to yourself. It softens that harsh inner critic and replaces it with accountability wrapped in compassion. Instead of saying, "You're not good enough," it says, "You can do better, and I know you will." It's not about lowering your standards. It's about lifting your spirit so you can reach them. Confidence built this way doesn't shout, it simply stands. Every act of self-respect becomes a small declaration of worth. Getting enough sleep, keeping a promise to yourself, setting a boundary saying now, when it matters. These are not small things, they are daily votes for your value. Each choice tells your mind and heart, I am worth showing up for. And over time, those small acts create an unshakable belief that you belong in your own life. When you respect yourself, you stop seeking permission to be confident. You no longer wait for others to see your value before you act on it. You walk into rooms differently, not to impress, but to express. You stop trying to prove something and start trying to contribute something. Respect frees you from the exhausting need to be perfect, because you finally understand that you were never meant to earn your worth, only to live it. Bravery without respect is fragile. It burns fast and fades when challenged. But bravery with respect becomes resilience. It allows you to take risks not because you need to prove something, but because you have nothing to prove. You know who you are, and that's enough to carry you through uncertainty, rejection, and failure. Respect is the quiet engine behind every truly confident person. It's the difference between pretending to be strong and knowing that you are. It's the unseen work, the inner dialogue, the small choices, the consistent care that builds confidence that no criticism can shake and no success can inflate. Respect isn't a performance. It's not something you display when others are around or when it benefits your image. It's how you carry yourself in the quiet moments when no one else will know what choice you made. The way you talk to yourself in those silent spaces. That's where the truth of your self-respect lives. You can tell the world you're confident, but if your inner voice tears you down, the world will sense that contradiction long before you speak. The conversations you have with yourself are powerful. They shape how you show up, how you love, how you take risks. If your inner dialogue is filled with criticism, doubt, and comparison, it will be hard to believe that you deserve more than the bare minimum. But when your inner voice is grounded in kindness and accountability, you carry yourself differently. You walk taller. You make decisions from a place of worth, not fear. Self-respect begins in those invisible acts, the ones no one claps for. Waking up early to pursue your goals, saying no to what drains you, resting when your body asks for it, forgiving yourself when you fall short. These choices send a message: I matter. You're not just building habits, you're teaching yourself that your time, energy, and well-being are valuable. Over time, that quiet discipline becomes a language of respect that others can feel, even if you never say a word. The tone of your inner voice becomes the blueprint for how others treat you. If you constantly talk down to yourself, you'll unconsciously accept similar treatment from others. If you apologize for existing, people will learn to take more than they should. But when your self-talk is honest and kind, you create a boundary, a standard that says, this is how I deserve to be spoken to. Respect isn't demanded, it's demonstrated, and it starts within. You can't teach people how to treat you if you haven't learned how to treat yourself. The relationship you have with your own mind becomes the model for every other relationship you build. When you speak to yourself with patience and compassion, you naturally expect that energy from others. When you speak to yourself harshly, you unconsciously invite people who echo that same tone. Your inner voice sets the tone for your outer world. There's a quiet strength in treating yourself well when no one is watching. It's easy to be kind when it's public, when others are there to applaud your self-care or your progress. But the real respect happens when you choose what's right over what's easy, when you choose growth over comfort, when you keep promises to yourself that no one will ever know about. That kind of integrity builds confidence that no validation can match. Your inner voice is not just a reflection of how you feel. It's an architect. It builds your sense of identity, shaping what you believe you deserve. If your internal dialogue is filled with empathy, grace, and belief, you will approach challenges with trust instead of fear. You will stop questioning your place in the room because you've already claimed it within yourself. The tone of that inner conversation becomes the melody of your life. Respect, in its purest form, is how you hold yourself when no one else is holding you. It's in the moments when you fail and still choose to be gentle. It's in the silence after disappointment when you tell yourself, I can try again. It's the way you forgive yourself, the way you encourage yourself, the way you speak truth without cruelty. Because when you learn to treat yourself with respect in the unseen moments, the world simply mirrors what you've already built within. Confidence without respect is like a house without a foundation. It might look impressive from the outside, but it can't weather a single storm. When your sense of worth depends on being seen, liked, or praised, your confidence becomes conditional. You find yourself constantly performing, smiling when you're exhausted, pretending to be sure when you're uncertain, chasing approval just to feel secure for a moment. It's not confidence, it's survival disguised as strength. The danger of performative confidence is that it feels real for a while. Compliments, recognition, likes, and applause can give you a temporary high. But once the noise fades, you're left with the quiet question that no audience can answer. Do I actually believe in myself? That's where the difference between validation and self-respect becomes clear. Validation fills the space around you. Self-respect fills the space within you. When you chase validation before cultivating self-respect, your confidence becomes fragile. Every opinion threatens it, every rejection cracks it, every mistake shatters it. You start measuring your worth by reactions, not values. You become a reflection of what others need you to be instead of an expression of who you truly are. Respect, on the other hand, anchors you. It gives you permission to be imperfect without losing your identity. Authentic confidence doesn't need to announce itself. It's quiet, grounded, and consistent. It doesn't shift based on who's watching or who's impressed. It comes from knowing that your value isn't dependent on perception. When you respect yourself, you stop performing and start living. You don't have to fake certainty. Your calm presence becomes your proof. Performance-based confidence is exhausting. It keeps you on a treadmill of proving. Always running, never arriving. You can achieve great things and still feel empty because every win must be validated to matter. But self-respect breaks that cycle. When you act from respect, your motivation changes. You no longer strive to be seen as worthy. You act because you already know you are. There's a quiet honesty that comes with self-respect. You can admit your flaws without shame because they no longer define your worth. You can celebrate your successes without arrogance because they don't inflate your identity. Confidence rooted in respect allows you to show up authentically, not perfect, but real. And that authenticity has a power that performance never can. When you respect yourself, you stop negotiating your identity. You stop changing your tone, your goals, your boundaries just to fit someone else's expectations. You no longer confuse attention for acceptance or popularity for purpose. You start standing firm in who you are, not because you're stubborn, but because you finally trust your own voice more than the crowd's applause. The truth is, you can't fake authenticity. You can project confidence, but the moment you stop performing, the act collapses. Real confidence isn't about being impressive, it's about being aligned. It's the outcome of deep respect for your own journey, your own pace, your own growth. Without that respect, confidence is just noise. With it, confidence becomes something unshakable even in silence. Respect is not something you wake up with, it's something you build brick by brick through the promises you keep to yourself. Every commitment, no matter how small, becomes a reflection of what you believe you deserve. When you say you'll do something and you actually follow through, you send a powerful message to your own mind, I can rely on me. That reliability becomes the foundation of confidence, and without it, self-belief feels hollow. Most people break promises to themselves far more easily than they would to anyone else. We cancel on our goals, we compromise our boundaries, we let ourselves down quietly, assuming it doesn't matter because no one saw it. But every broken promise chips away at self-trust. And without self-trust, respect can't survive. You can't value someone you don't believe in, and that includes yourself. Following through doesn't have to mean perfection. It means consistency. It means showing up for yourself even when it's inconvenient, even when no one else will know the difference. It could be keeping your word to go for that morning walk, finishing the task you promised, or speaking up when you said you would. Each small act becomes proof that your words mean something, not to others, but to you. When you keep promises to yourself, you begin to transform your internal dialogue. You stop saying, I'll try, and start saying, I will. You stop making excuses because you start believing your actions matter. And when your actions align with your words, your mind learns to trust you again. That trust is the quiet confidence that allows you to move through life without needing external approval. Respect grows stronger each time you choose discipline over distraction. It grows when you protect your time, when you honor your limits, when you choose growth over comfort. The world can't see these moments, but you can feel them. They create a sense of integrity that no one else can give you. You start to feel proud, not of the outcome, but of the consistency. That pride becomes the spark of true self-respect. Breaking promises to yourself, on the other hand, creates internal chaos. You start to doubt your own words. You begin to feel disconnected, unsure, and unmotivated. You lose that sense of certainty that comes from reliability. But the good news is self-trust can always be rebuilt. It doesn't happen overnight, it happens one honest promise at a time, and each one matters. The promises that build respect aren't always dramatic. Sometimes they're as simple as drinking enough water, journaling when you said you would, or saying no to something that doesn't serve you. What matters isn't the size of the promise, it's the integrity behind it. You're telling yourself, I am someone worth keeping my word to. That sentence, lived out through action, becomes the language of self-respect. When you start keeping promises to yourself, something subtle shifts. You no longer wait for motivation, you rely on momentum. You no longer seek validation, you create evidence. And you no longer look for respect outside of yourself, because you've already earned it within. Every goal honored, every boundary held, every value protected becomes a quiet reminder that you can trust the person you see in the mirror. Boundaries are often misunderstood. People see them as barriers, as ways of keeping others out, but in truth they are bridges. They connect us more honestly. A boundary is not a wall built from fear, it's a line drawn from clarity. It says, this is where I end and where you begin. It's not about control or rejection, it's about respect for yourself, your energy, and your emotional space. When you say no, you're not turning away from people, you're turning toward your own well-being. You're acknowledging that your time, your peace, and your values matter. Saying no doesn't make you selfish, it makes you self-aware. It's the act of choosing what aligns with who you are, instead of bending yourself to fit the expectations of others. Respect begins to grow the moment you realize that protecting your energy is not an act of withdrawal, but of wisdom. Boundaries are how you teach the world how to treat you. Every time you allow something that violates your peace, you send the message that it's acceptable. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you quietly train others to ignore your limits. But when you speak your boundaries clearly and calmly, you show people what you expect. Not through confrontation, but through consistency. Boundaries are not about punishment, they're about communication. Many people fear that setting boundaries will make them unkind or distant. But the opposite is true. Boundaries allow love to be cleaner, freer, and more sustainable. Without them, resentment builds, connection fades, and authenticity disappears. When you respect your limits, you can give to others from a place of fullness, not obligation. You begin to offer your best, not your leftovers. Saying no is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect because it acknowledges that your capacity has value. You are not an endless source of energy or time, and pretending to be only leads to burnout. Oh, no. To one thing is always a yes. To something else, often you rest your priorities or your peace. It's not about shutting people out, it's about keeping yourself intact. Boundaries also reveal what you truly value. You protect what matters most, whether it's your time, your creativity, your mental health, or your relationships. Boundaries clarify your priorities. They are not limitations but expressions of care, both for yourself and for the people you love. Because when you respect your own boundaries, you model what mutual respect looks like. There will always be people who don't understand your boundaries, who take your no personally. But that's not your burden to carry. The purpose of a boundary isn't to please others, it's to preserve integrity. Over time, the right people will stay because they respect your space, and the wrong ones will drift away because they were drawn to your compliance, not your truth. Both outcomes are a form of alignment. Boundaries aren't rigid lines carved in stone. They evolve as you do. They're living expressions of your growth, your values, and your self-awareness. As you change, so will the way you protect and prioritize your energy. And each time you honor those changes with honesty and courage, you reaffirm something powerful, that your worth doesn't need permission to be protected. Comparison is one of the quietest thieves of self-respect. It creeps in subtly, convincing you that your worth depends on how you measure up to someone else. You start to believe that success, beauty, or happiness is a competition, a limited resource that others can take from you. But the truth is, comparison blinds you to your own progress. It turns your focus outward when the real work of respect always begins within. When confidence depends on comparison, it becomes fragile. You only feel good when you're doing better than someone else, and you feel inadequate the moment you're not. It's a constant emotional roller coaster driven by external validation. But respect, real, steady self-respect, doesn't fluctuate based on who's ahead or behind. It's rooted in identity, not position. It's the quiet knowing that your value is not up for debate. Comparison tells you a false story, that someone else's success diminishes yours. It tricks you into thinking that worth is something to be earned through ranking rather than something you already possess. But when you respect yourself, you begin to see that everyone is on a different timeline. You stop racing and start learning. You begin to admire without envy and compete only with the person you were yesterday. Self-respect shifts your perspective from scarcity to abundance. Instead of seeing others as threats, you start to see them as mirrors, reflections of what's possible. You no longer feel the need to copy or compete because you recognize that your journey has its own rhythm. The respect you hold for yourself allows you to celebrate others without losing yourself in the process. Comparison thrives where self-trust is weak. When you don't trust your path, you cling to others for direction. You start shaping your choices around trends, approval, or fear of falling behind. But respect rebuilds that trust. It reminds you that your pace is valid, your growth is enough, and your story doesn't need to look like anyone else's to have meaning. Conditional confidence, the kind built on comparison, is exhausting. It forces you to keep proving your worth through performance and perfection. You live for applause and fear silence. But unconditional self-respect frees you from that cycle. You start to act from authenticity, not insecurity. You stop chasing validation because you've already decided that you're enough, regardless of who notices. When you compare yourself to others, you trade gratitude for judgment. You overlook your own progress because you're too focused on someone else's highlight reel. But respect brings your attention back home. It helps you see your journey for what it is: imperfect, unique, and still unfolding. You realize that what makes your path meaningful is not how fast you go, but how true you stay to yourself along the way. The moment you stop comparing, you make room for growth. You create the space to appreciate your own effort and to honor your individuality. Confidence built on comparison fades with every new standard. Confidence built on self-respect endures through every change. Because respect isn't about being the best. It's about being at peace with who you are, no matter where you stand. Fear is a natural part of being human. It shows up when you step into the unknown, when you risk failure, when you reveal something true about yourself. But fear only becomes paralyzing when you start to believe that your worth depends on the outcome. When you value yourself, that fear begins to lose its control. Respect turns fear into courage by reminding you that success or failure doesn't change who you are at your core. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move despite it. And that decision becomes easier when you have self-respect. When you truly value yourself, mistakes stop feeling like personal verdicts. They become lessons. You stop asking, "What if I'm not good enough?" and start asking, "What could I learn from this?" Respect shifts the focus from proving your value to expressing it. When you know your worth, rejection loses its sting. You begin to understand that someone's opinion, opportunity, or approval can't define you. Fear thrives on uncertainty about your value, but respect gives you stability. You can face risk with calm instead of panic because you know that even if things go wrong, you won't lose yourself. That's the quiet power of respect. It anchors you while the world shakes. Respect also changes how you interpret fear. Instead of seeing it as a signal to stop, you start to see it as a sign that something meaningful is at stake. Fear becomes an invitation to grow rather than a threat to avoid. You begin to recognize that courage is not reckless, it's intentional. It's choosing to act not because you're fearless, but because you trust yourself enough to handle what comes next. Without respect, fear becomes personal. Every failure feels like proof of inadequacy. Every risk feels dangerous. Every challenge feels like a test of your worth. You hesitate, overthink, and shrink yourself to stay safe. But when you respect yourself, fear no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes a companion that reminds you you're stepping beyond your comfort zone. Respect doesn't erase fear. It gives you the confidence to walk with it. Self-respect turns fear into courage because it grounds you in truth. You no longer need certainty to act, you just need integrity. You make choices that align with your values, not your insecurities. Even when fear whispers that you might fail, respect answers, "I can face it." That's what makes courage sustainable. It's not driven by adrenaline or ego, but by deep self-trust. Every time you face fear with respect for yourself, you build resilience, you start to collect proof that you can handle more than you thought. And that evidence becomes a quiet kind of strength, not the loud, defiant kind, but the steady confidence that keeps you standing after setbacks. Respect transforms fear from something that limits you into something that shapes you. When you value yourself, fear no longer dictates your choices. It might still whisper, but it doesn't decide. You begin to act from a place of grounded confidence rather than anxious survival. Respect gives you the courage to speak up, to take risks, to dream bigger. Not because you're certain of success, but because you're certain of your worth. Confidence doesn't always look like what we imagine. It's not the loudest voice in the room or the boldest person on the stage. Real confidence is often quiet, not because it lacks power, but because it doesn't need to prove it. It's the calm presence that comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you're capable of. It's the peace that follows when you stop trying to convince others and start believing yourself. Quiet confidence is built, not broadcasted. It grows from the choices you make when no one's watching, from the moments you doubt yourself and keep going anyway. It's in the humility to listen, the courage to learn, and the strength to stay grounded when things don't go your way. It's not something you wear to impress. It's something you earn through consistency and integrity. Loud confidence often needs attention to survive, but quiet confidence thrives in silence. It doesn't need to be validated to feel real. It's not about being right all the time. It's about being secure enough to be wrong without losing yourself. When you respect who you are, you no longer chase moments to feel powerful. You create a life that makes you feel at peace. Quiet confidence is steady. It doesn't rise and fall with the opinions of others. It allows you to walk into a room without needing to dominate it, to speak without shouting, to influence without forcing. It's the kind of confidence that earns trust, not demands it. People feel it not because you say much, because your presence carries weight, the weight of authenticity and self-respect. When you know you're enough, the noise of comparison fades. You stop needing to outshine anyone else because you're no longer competing for space. You understand that confidence isn't a performance. It's permission. Permission to show up as you are, imperfect and still worthy. That permission frees you from the pressure to be impressive and replaces it with the freedom to be genuine. Quiet confidence grows when you start keeping promises to yourself, honoring your limits, and owning your story. It doesn't grow through applause, it grows through alignment. Every time your actions reflect your values, your confidence deepens. You begin to realize that real strength doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be true. The calm certainty of self-worth makes space for others too. When you're grounded in your own value, you don't need to compete or prove yourself. You can celebrate others without feeling smaller. You can disagree without disrespect. You can lead without control. Quiet confidence makes you generous because you're no longer operating from scarcity. You're operating from sufficiency. Confidence that grows quietly is the kind that lasts. It's not shaken by failure or inflated by praise. It moves through life with grace, unhurried, unbothered, unforced. It's the kind of confidence that comes from self-respect, from the understanding that your worth doesn't need to be earned or displayed. It simply is.